Okay, we're live, and thank you very much for coming to visit us because both of us have been terribly lonely. And so we really enjoy the company. So tonight we're going to give you a lot of, there's a lot of really interesting stuff. At least I think it's really interesting on I love physics. I love particle physics. I love theoretical physics. I just love all of it. And archaeology. It's another passion of mine. And of course, we will end it with something paranormal. Of course, as if I'm not paranormal enough. Come on. I work hard at it. Okay. So Adrian, did you want to start reading the first article?
Sure, let's do on fast radio bursts. 1 second here.
Okay.
All right, so I'm sorry, I'm not very good at sharing this stuff. So, scientists detected, I practiced this. Scientists detected the radio colors of an FRB, or fast radio burst, for the first time. Scientists connected two of the largest radio telescopes in the world to take a close look at the mysterious colors of the intergalactic phenomenon known as fast radio bursts. And it has the word colors in quotes. These are not T-Rex fingers, they're quotes. The researchers found that while these millisecond-long flashes of light are invisible to human eyes, they glow with a veritable rainbow of radio wavelengths. And that could have big implications for what's causing them. Once we analyzed the data and compared the different radio colors, we were very surprised. Inés Pastor-Marazuela, an astrophysicist at the University of Amsterdam, and lead
Hey, you're off. Your sound went off. Or like it lowered. It lowered just a little too low. It's like you kind of heard you, but it was way too soft. Something kind of.
Is it too soft now?
No, it's beautiful now.
Okay.
You're usually very good as far as sound goes. This is the first time that something has been amiss with the sound.
Obstructed.
So start with the beginning of that sentence.
Once we analyzed the data and compared the different radio colors, we were very surprised. Inés Pastor-Marazuela, an astrophysicist at the University of Amsterdam and lead author of a new study on FRBs, said in a statement, the team determined that the FRB, or fast radio burst, was likely an isolated, slowly rotating magnetar, an extraordinarily dense, high magnetic neutron star that crams the mass of a sun into the ball no wider than a city.
Isn't this amazing? I just have to stop here. Exactly what we're talking, kind of like explain a bit what this thing is, because this is the size of imagine the size of the sun crammed into the size as small as a city.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so that's a huge
lot of energy.
That's very dense. Very dense colors. And it's got a whole different range of colors that it's pulsating at.
Yeah, it just flashes, and we wouldn't even be able to see it. But if you were to take the radio, I think it explains in the article, but you take the wavelengths and you divvy them up, and then you can translate it into colors. Pardon me.
Yeah, because the short wavelengths are blues and violets, and the longer ones are yellow, orange, and red.
I believe that's the case.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is the case.
Yeah, it goes on.
So we know what you're describing to
right.
Give us a picture, like envision what you're describing.
Yeah, small, dense star that flashes not in light but in radio waves. So it's the radio wave emissions are just pulsing, and I guess if you had a radio station, you might be able to hear them, but you need quite the antenna.
And how is it they were able to spot this?
I would have to hunt through the article. I can read it from.
Well, damn well you should.
Just read the article. Light we cannot see. Fast radio bursts are some of the most energetic outbursts in the universe. Not just your temper tantruming toddler. Packing more energy than the sun produces in 3 days into the blips of light that last just a few milliseconds. Thousands of FRBs flash across the universe every day, but our human eyes see none of them. True to their name, fast radio bursts only shine in radio wavelengths, far beyond the red edge of the visible spectrum. However, the radio spectrum contains a miniature rainbow in its own right, with shorter radio wavelengths appearing bluish to radio telescopes and longer wavelengths appearing reddish. As Michelle said, in their new study, the researchers took a more detailed look at the radio colors of the FRBs than ever before by training 2 radio telescopes onto the same fast radio burst source. Using the low frequency array, nicknamed LOFAR, LOFAR, the hill people, using low frequency array or LOFAR and Westerbroek synthesis radio telescope, 2 radio telescopes from different facilities in the Netherlands. Well, how far apart can they be? The researchers staked out a periodically repeating FRB named 20180916b, which emits a salvo of bursts every 16 days or so. One explanation for this FRB's predictable, repetitive schedule suggests that a binary star system is involved. Every 2 weeks or so, the FRB source moves in front of its companion star relative to Earth, briefly permitting the fast radio burst light to shine across space towards their telescopes. Systems like these include a constant storm of stellar wind blowing out of the FRB source companion star, the researchers said, and that energetic electron-packed wind should block certain radio wavelengths. Strong stellar winds from the companion of the fast radio burst source were expected to let most blue shortwave radio length. I tripped. Strong stellar winds from the companion of the fast radio burst source were expected to let most blue short wavelength radio light escape the system, Pastor Marazuela said. But the redder long wavelength radio should be blocked more, or even completely. To test that hypothesis, the researchers used 2 radio telescopes to target the 2 different radio colors, looking at high reddish frequencies with a Westerbroek telescope and low bluish frequencies with a LOFAR telescope. If the binary model was correct, only the blue frequencies should make it past the star system's intense winds. However, that wasn't the case. The telescopes detected both red and blue radio frequencies emanating from the FRB, though never at the same time. We saw 2 days of bluer radio bursts, followed by 3 days of redder radio bursts, Marswell said. We rule out the original binary wind models now. Something else must be going on. I talk now about magnetars on the move. This finding has a few big implications for fast radio burst research. For one, the environment around this FRB is probably a bare one, the researchers said, meaning there's likely very little stellar wind hazing things up and blocking the redder light frequencies from escaping. That rules out a binary system, the team said. The better explanation is that FRB 20180916b, the same as before, is being made by a magnetar. As the magnetar slowly rotates, its bright magnetic field could shine toward Earth every 2 weeks or so, creating the repetitive FRB observed in this study.
Okay, so can you give us an explanation of what you just said? Because it was really fascinating.
Fascinating enough. Let me find you.
So just give us a quick synopsis.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what's
going on.
What they thought was going to happen didn't happen, and what they think is happening might be happening. So the first theory didn't fly very well, and they thought that there'd be solar winds from big planets and stuff blocking shit. That's what I got out of that. And then a magnetar is just a very dense, tiny star that's incredibly bright that spins. So as it spins, its magnetic field rotates as well. And then in that rotation, it's like like an ambulance light.
Yeah.
It's like that. So the star is spinning, and we're here relative to that. And as it spins, the magnetic information faces us, and it creates these bursts. That's what I'm getting.
That's pretty. So see, the sun is a star, and this is also a star, but it's a different type of star.
Yeah.
Dense. It's a dense sun.
Dense, tiny.
It's where they take the mass of the sun and you condense it.
So
it's really, because the universe. One of the theories how the universe started was basically it wasn't a big bang, which is George Lemaitre, which was the turn of the century, was a physicist but also a Catholic priest. He's the one who coined the phrase the Big Bang and said that's how the universe started. And most people who are atheists don't realize that George Lemaitre was who invented basically brought this to the Pope, and the Pope said, "I will put this into doctrine." And he's no, don't put it into Catholic doctrine. He was going to put it into Catholic doctrine that we had to believe in the Big Bang, and which most people think is actually negates the idea of God. But here's a Catholic priest who's got a doctorate in physics and who thought of this thing. But see, the Big Bang, people think that the Big Bang is the very, very, very small, dense particle that was so dense that it just exploded. But basically, it was just dense matter, not the small particle that went bang. It was more like inflation. All of a sudden, this matter that was just very condensed, inflated all of a sudden. And the universe, I think, maybe the shape of a cone. Some say it's an oval, but there's also the quantum loop cosmology, which is the bounce theory, where basically the one universe bounces into existence off of another universe, and so it's the propelling of pushing towards one universe that already exists, and then going pushing off this way because it can't go this way, it goes this way, and it's about quantum loop. I don't know if that's really taken off, but that's one of the other theories. But it's very interesting. But the denseness, so if you understand or if you have the idea of the dense, how the universe was once a dense matter rather than an explosion, and it just inflated. This is a star that happens to be very dense, and the stars usually are like the sun, which is not as dense, but this is the size of a city that has been condensed. You take a sun and then you condense it to the size of a city. That's what this star, the star like the sun is made of. It's really interesting. Part of me wonders, just like the universe, will this star one of these days, because usually the stars die,
Yeah.
But one of these days, will it maybe inflate just like the universe did? Because it's dense at the moment, and whatever had the universe suddenly inflate, maybe it was going inverting.
Mm-hmm.
So in this direction so far until it actually had to inflate because it was getting too dense. So the compact universe had so much energy, because if the universe is getting denser and denser, which is smaller and smaller and smaller, the entire universe smaller and smaller and smaller, and all the energy is going in this direction, it's going to bounce it's going to push off because it's going to get too dense at some point that it's going to explode. It's going to, but not really explosion. It's expansion.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this star that's pulsating all these beautiful colors, maybe it's pulsating these colors and it's acting like this because it's dense. Like some people I know. No, maybe the fact that it's a sun that's so compacted, if the size of a sun compacted into the size of a city, that's what's probably causing these radio waves and these color bursts. It could be that it's so dense, and then when maybe it will expand and be all of a sudden we'll see a new sun out there. Maybe. Or it will be as large as the sun.
Maybe. I know regular stars eventually expand into red giants before they collapse into neutron stars and dwarfs. So
what will this thing do? Because it's different than the sun. It's different than a regular star. Will it expand greater than the size of the sun? Possibly.
I was just looking at magnetar life cycles, and I've got some long, boring papers I can read. Let's see, there's Wikipedia.
No long, boring papers. Just if you can find it, that'd be great.
Magnetar, known magnetars, discovery, origins of magnetic fields, bright supernovas.
Hello, Black Samurai. Hello, Peace. It's so nice to see you here.
Like other neutron stars, so magnetar is a kind of neutron star. They're around 20 kilometers or 12 miles in diameter. Wow. And have a mass of about 1.4 solar masses. They're formed by the collapse of a star with a mass 10 to 25 times greater than our regular sun. So very large stars collapse into neutron stars, and some of them are magnetars. Magnetars are differentiated from other neutron stars by having even stronger magnetic fields and by rotating more slowly in comparison. Most magnetars rotate once every 2 to 10 seconds, whereas the typical neutron stars rotate 1 to 10 times per second. That's a really fast spin. You got this thing the size of a city spinning that fast.
Yeah.
Wow. Several times a second. So, okay.
Is it the denseness that is causing it to spin and propel?
I'm not sure what causes the spin per se. I don't know what causes the spin. They just find that they spin. So it's you find these things and they're spinning.
Thank you, doctor.
Well, I mean, the planet Earth is spinning too. We don't know why it's spinning.
It's spinning at a very fast rate.
Yeah, everything's
spinning. I'm saying, is it the denseness? Because it's...
Well, being dense doesn't make you spin. Although there are days when my head is spinning and I feel pretty dense. But no, I don't think the density causes the spin per se. I think it has to do with the magnetic interaction with the environment. Similar to you can make a bowl of water with a ring magnet, and you can get a ball magnet and plunger it, and it'll start spinning. As if you can play with that. It's super magnetics and stuff. It's kind of cool, but so magnetars are differentiated from other neutron stars by having strong magnetic fields and by rotating more slowly than regular neutron stars. That's all I can tell you about that.
If that's what a magnet does in water, I wonder if that says something about the nature of the universe, because we know that it's mostly dark energy and dark matter. Yeah, we don't know what the rest of it actually is. We're kind of lost on that. We don't quite know what it is. Maybe the nature of the universe has something to do with that. Like you said,
I'm pretty sure it's electromagnetic, but everything seems to be electromagnetic. It's all got an electrical charge, and it all interacts that way. So it's maybe something to do with the electric universe theory. I don't know, because it's just a theory. and just got a flesh
Was
brain.
it the universe when it exploded? The four basic elements that came out was nuclear energy, strong nuclear energy, weak nuclear energy, magnetism, and gravity. What the four?
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, that's the four basic. That's what started everything after the explosion happened. So I found that this particular article, where the heck is it? Good God. Details. Huh. Okay, let's try that again.
What you doing?
Trying to get it disappeared. The article. Just putting in the link for the article.
Oh, into the thing.
Yeah, and it disappeared. They put it in there and it disappeared. Let's see. An indigenous people in the Philippines. So this is not the whole Philippines. This is an indigenous peoples, like in Australia, you've got the Aborigines. The indigenous people of the Philippines. That's interesting. The Philippines, it's not just America that had America was North and South America didn't have anybody on it, and then people just either walked over from the Bering Strait, or they used during the Ice Age. They came over in skin boats from the Solutreans did. From France. So it looks like, Japan's the same way. The people of Japan are not the real Japanese people. They pushed and kind of, basically, there's very few of the indigenous people of Japan left. So in the Philippines, we have the same thing. So it looks like we should not throw stones until we really understand the history of the world, and that pretty much every civilization that exists probably pushed another civilization out. The Celts were there, but they think that maybe there was somebody there before the Celts, and then the Anglo-Saxons, the Saxons moved in, and they pushed the Celts out, and they took over their land. And was it Normans, the people from Brittany, from France, also moved in to Britain. So it's unbelievable. It happens all over the world, and it's happened since the dawn of time. But in this, what I found interesting about this article is there's a type of DNA that they found in Siberia in a cave, and they believe that this particular DNA, the Russians may have some of it, but it's the Mongols, the people of Asia, they believe, the Denisovians. That's this name. We know about a few groups. We had the Neanderthals, the Homo sapiens, which came out of Africa. And then there have been many other types of people, like even hobbits, that have roamed, that are completely gone now. Like they're all branches of the human tree. And these indigenous people have the most Denisovian DNA, which is it's a mysterious ancient hominids, is what they call.
Yeah, we don't have any pictures. Rare.
Say that again, please.
We don't have any pictures. We don't know what they look like.
Yeah, they don't. The people, these indigenous people here in the Philippines, looking at a picture of them, and they are very dark-skinned. Philippines usually aren't very dark-skinned, and they actually look like they have their hair's more like an afro, but they kind of look African, but not really. There's a little difference. But they only have 5% Denisovian. So when you think about it, you kind of wonder, we really don't know what this ancient Denisovians really look like.
I wonder if they can recreate it. If you get enough Filipinos with the.
Well, it's not Filipinos. It's these indigenous people
right.
who live in the Philippines. The indigenous people of the Philippines, kind of like the Native Americans of America. So
right.
you would
be. What do they call themselves?
Right. Let's see. Looking, what do they call themselves? I read this whole article. Denisovians are an elusive bunch known mainly from ancient DNA samples and traces of that DNA that the ancient hominids shared when they inbred with Homo sapiens, which are the people who moved from Africa into Europe. And the Neanderthals disappeared, but you'll find Neanderthal. Everyone either has 0 to 4% Neanderthal in them. 0 to 4. The most you can have is 4. And usually the people of Asia have the highest amount of Neanderthal in them. And most people think, oh, it must be the Western world, the white people. Not so. Not so. So everybody's got that. People don't know enough about things that they make a lot of assumptions. But the Neanderthals have been proven to be very intelligent by the things that they're able to do. Yeah. And so there's another article we'll be reading after this, which actually reminds me of some of the things that the Neanderthals did, not only the Neanderthals, but actually the first emperor of China. So that's, and it's not in China, it's in a different place in the world. Anyway, and traces of that DNA that the ancient hominids shared when they inbred with Homo sapiens, they left their biggest genetic imprint on people who now live in Southeast Asian islands nearby Papua New Guinea and Australia. Genetic evidence now shows that Philippine Negrito ethnic group has inherited the most Denisovian ancestry of all. Indigenous people known as, okay, here's your answer.
Here we go.
Aita Magbukan. A-Y-T-A. Aita, M-A-G, Mag, B-U-K-O-N, Magbukan, get around 5% of their DNA from Denisovians, a new study finds. So it's a small amount. And the Egyptians today, the Egyptians 1,500 years ago had, according to when they dig up the graveyards, the oldest graveyards of the people, rather than, because the pharaohs had different DNA, because they inbred with each other, but they also took wives from other countries. But the people themselves didn't, it was a very small amount of sub-Saharan African, or not all. And they found redheads and blondes and all sorts of things. But 1,500 years ago, there was a influx of sub-Saharan African DNA. I would say that's the people of Kush, because the Egypt was no longer being ruled by Egyptians. In fact, It was the people of Nubia, which then was called Kush, and they adopted, out of all the people who conquered Egypt, they adopted the Egyptian ways, the gods. They buried people under pyramids, but the pyramids of ancient Egypt. You know, there's three types of pyramids, and I know you probably know the answer to this. The Egyptian pyramids, which are the same on each side,
right?
is
The four-sided.
exactly the same length, the measurements. The ones in Kush are very small, made out of small bricks,
Okay.
but they're taller than they are wide. What type of pyramid is that, or triangle is that?
Oh, well, I used to know it's a platonic solid of some kind, but it's not a regular platonic solid because it has a square for a base and triangles for sides.
Okay. Well, they found. It's very sad that they blew up the tops of these pyramids. They were built beautifully, but they picked up on the ancient Egyptians, their ways, their culture, their belief systems later than the Egyptians did, but they embraced it. And some of the jewelry, and it's just beautiful. But when they went to excavate it in the late 19th century, which is the 1800s, they blew up the tops of most of these because they thought there was gold hidden in the top because the grave was at the bottom. It was just total. Somebody said, because somebody found, I think it was Bartoli, he found where the treasure was, which was under the pyramid. So I think he might have said, oh, it's in the top, so blow those up, because he probably didn't want anybody to find the grave goods. So now the people of Egypt have 8% sub-Saharan African DNA. So I don't know, I forget why I was getting on. We're talking about this Denisovian thing.
Yeah,
so if I was thinking about the amount, 5% is very small, 8% is very small. So the idea, if you had 5% Denisovian, you may or may not look at all like a Denisovian, or have any of their ways, their culture. It's so long ago, but it's interesting. Okay, so they found 200,000-year-old stone tools in the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, made by the Denisovians. So that's amazing. So they started arriving 50,000 years ago or more, then interbred with resident Denisovians. I guess the people, the Homo sapiens sapiens, arrived 50,000 years ago, and the Denisovians were living in that part of New Guinea 200,000 years ago. That's pretty amazing that they found their tools. Evolutionary genetics, Maximilian Lorena and Matthias Jacobson, both at Uppsala University in Sweden. Okay, and their team described the new evidence in current biology, even as complexities of ancient interbreeding in Southeast Asia become clearer. Denisovians remain a mysterious crowd. It's unclear how the different Denisovian groups on the mainland and the Southeast Asian islands were related to each other and how genetically diverse they were. So ancient DNA shows that the peopling of Southeastern islands were surprisingly complex. So it would probably be that it's an island and a lot of people moved around in boats And there's probably a lot of people and a lot of DNA that we just can't. They say most of our DNA are gene, but they don't. It's called junk DNA because they can't identify it, and it's probably because it's just lost to history. It's not really junk DNA. It's just lost. So let's see. This next something about this because it's did you want to do this one?
We on to a new article?
This article, I read this article and I thought that was very interesting. At first, it's that all they found, and then actually they found much more, which I wish that they had included in this article. They said they found a lot of artifacts.
Is this the flowers article?
Yeah. This is really, I think this is really interesting.
Sure. Am I reading it?
If you want to read it, yeah.
Sure. 2,000-year-old flower offerings found under Teotihuacan pyramid in Mexico. The bouquets had survived a bonfire. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the ancient people of Teotihuacan wrapped bunches of flowers into beautiful bouquets, laid them beneath a jumble of wood, and set the pile ablaze. Now, archaeologists have found the remains of those surprisingly well-preserved flowers in a tunnel snaking beneath the pyramid of the ancient city, located northeast of what is now Mexico City. The pyramid itself is immense and would have stood 75 feet, or 23 meters, tall when it was first built, making it taller than the Sphinx of Giza. The Teotihuacan pyramid is part of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, Quetzalcoatl, which is built in honor of Quetzalcoatl, a serpent god who is worshipped in Mesoamerica. Archaeologists found the bouquets 59 feet below ground in the deepest part of the tunnel, says Sergio Gomez Chavez, an archaeologist with Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, who is leading the excavation of the tunnel. Numerous pieces of pottery, along with a sculpture depicting Tlaloc, a god associated with rainfall and fertility, were found beside the bouquets, he added. The bouquets were likely part of rituals, possibly associated with fertility, that indigenous peoples performed in the tunnel, Gomez Chavez told Live Science in a translated email. The team hopes that by determining the identity of the flowers, they can learn more about the rituals.
Okay, let's stop here.
Sure.
I read this article. Okay. They're assuming these flowers have some kind of fertility, some fertility god or goddess
ritual
that they
value.
perform the rituals there, but they don't. And they describe these bouquets as these beautiful bouquets. They don't even know what the flowers are. Are they flowers? Are they weeds? I mean, you have no what. Were they just picked and thrown there?
The article's a little big. It's a bit.
It's kind of like it's based on a lot of assumptions almost. They could be just they were flowers and they were given to the person that died. Not necessarily any fertility ritual was done there. If you don't know what the flowers were and you don't know what this culture identify these particular flowers with, be it a god and if it's a god, what type of god? Was it a bloodthirsty god or was it a fertility god? Flowers aren't. We put flowers at graves because it's life. It's like we're giving life to the dead. It's not a dead place when we go there, and it could be that there's the same reason why they left flowers. It was because they were giving life and adding something that's alive to something that's dead. And then they burned all this wood. And the action, they say that in certain cultures, certain people were cremated because they were of higher status than others. So they wanted the soul to immediately go to the afterlife. Well, the other people, they would take the flesh off the bones and then bury the bones.
Not the fast track.
And yeah, because you have a different status. So it could be that they added life to where it was dead and then burned all these logs on top of it. So they would bring life. They would send life to the afterlife rather than sending death to the afterlife. I mean, I this is like
maybe to send the flower, the floral scents, the floral aromas up with the smoke.
And that could be it too. So it's a theory that's thrown on top of their theories. They have theories, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, how do they know? If you don't know what kind of flowers there were, then you don't know if there's a particular deity that it's associated with. They're assuming it's associated with a deity. And there's a ritual of fertility that was performed, yet you don't know what flowers they were, and they're calling them beautiful bouquets. They could have been ragweed,
No, maybe a bit premature.
We kind of the picture, because I looked at that picture and I would have to say I don't know what that is. You can tell it must have been something that was growing at one time. There's little stalks, but it's all gray and it looks like mostly dirt, is what it looks like. So
like a potato.
It's very interesting, but go ahead and read what they found down there. There's the flowers. What else did they find down there? This is what I find. Two things that I find. There's another thing I'll mention about the flowers, but
right. Well, the archaeologists found evidence of a large bonfire with numerous pieces of burnt wood where the bouquets were laid down. Gomez Chavez said, "It seems that people placed the bouquets on the ground first and covered them with a vast amount of wood. A vast amount of wood in a tunnel. The sheer amount of wood seems to have protected the bouquets from the bonfire's flames." That is kind of weird. The tunnel Gomez who was excavated was found in 2003, has yielded thousands of artifacts, including pottery, sculptures, cocoa beans, obsidian, animal remains, and even a miniature landscape with pools of liquid mercury. Archaeologists are still trying to understand why ancient people created the tunnel and how they used it. I think if I found
this, and does it give a date?
The miniature landscape with pools of liquid mercury seems more interesting to me than
yes. Does it give a date for this particular, when this burial occurred?
It doesn't say that yet. It says Teotihuacan contains several pyramids and flourished between roughly 100 BC and 680. So it had about a 700-year golden age.
So 100, how much BC?
100 BC.
100 BC. Okay. Now, the Neanderthals, because this is all these little things kind of are connecting here. The Neanderthals were found, the original idea of the Neanderthals, the skeleton that they found had rickets, had rheumatoid arthritis, was extremely old. So the skeleton was bent over and was not attractive looking. And so they assumed that Neanderthals were not intelligent, but then they found more
they found healthy specimens,
more healthier specimens of Neanderthals, and they realized that they had the same brain size that we have, and they had a firm grasp on thermodynamics. They would you have to heat birch bark to, was it 500 degrees Celsius? Yeah, to make bitumen. You have to heat it. It can't be any higher or lower.
Yeah,
it has to be heated for a certain length of time to get the bitumen out.
At a certain temperature and just held there. I believe that they did that in the ground. They made like a what do they call it? A clave? Clave? Is that what it's called? What do you cook? A clave, right? A clave. Is that what it's called? An autoclave? A clave? It's where you bake pottery in.
Oh, usually you bake pottery. You're talking about an ancient type of kiln.
Yeah, so a kiln, right? A kiln. Sorry, thanks. That's the word I was looking for. So
you're looking for kiln. Okay.
I was looking for kiln.
It's different than clay. It's very different than clay.
You'd bake it in a kiln. You'd bake the kiln.
Right. So, but still, how did they even? The amazing thing is, how did they even know that this bitumen existed before they drew it out of the birch bark? And how did they know what temperature? Not only they had got the right temperature, but they had to keep it. It's very hard to do, to keep it at the same temperature for hours.
Yeah,
it's almost like magic, really. But so
pretty advanced
knowing that, and then there's this disc that they found in Germany that has a constellation of stars and the moon in gold and silver, and so and of course that's in Germany.
Yeah.
So the Neanderthals were much more intelligent than we thought, and not only were they not grunting cave people carrying bats behind clubs behind them, clubbing their women and bringing them back to the cave. When they unearthed when they dug up these graves, they found that they were buried with flowers and garlands of flowers, like lays around their neck, like they do in Hawaii. So the people, when they died, they weren't just grunting cavemen. They had
burial rites.
Say that again, please.
They had burial rites.
They had burial rites because these people meant something to them. They weren't just brutish people, dragging women around and killing their prey by hitting them on the head or something like that. These were people who had, when you do something like that, which is what we do today when we have funerals, we bring living flowers to the dead. And because we love the person, we honor them, we admire them, we miss them. So when they buried these people, there was so much care and love that we're talking about people, even though they looked slightly different, they were built differently because they were built to survive an ice age. We are not built. We should not be living in the north at all. Our bodies are African. They came from Africa. Homo sapiens came out of Africa. We are not built for the cold, but the Neanderthals could survive an ice age. So that's another feather in their cap. We couldn't do that. And for some stupid reason, we're living in the north, and you're living even norther. So which is like, who's smarter, me or you? I'm slightly smarter, but we have bad winters here too.
Yeah.
You're smarter than I am. But it says a lot. Go ahead, please.
No, it's okay. It was just making noise.
No, it says a lot about the Neanderthals. Yeah, they were more like us.
Yeah, they were civilized and they were tribal. They moved around in small groups, and eventually volcanic ash covered the area and reduced hunting and breeding opportunities, and they died off.
Yeah, but they did breed with some of the Homo sapiens. Probably some of the Neanderthals moved to the Middle East, to the Levant, to areas where they met up with, to Italy, because there was Italy and there's Sicily, and that used to be connected to, is it Carthage, now Tunisia, of Africa. It used to be connected to Africa. So they could just walk from Africa right into Italy. But southern Italy is very it's Mediterranean climate. It never gets any winter there. So it makes sense if you moved there and stopped. Why they went north, I have no idea. It's like, don't stop, come back. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Because the next ice age hit, and when Europe was fully populated, the ice age hit, killed everyone off except for the people in southern Italy. And Europe was repopulated from the people in southern Italy, which is interesting. That's we have so much discord with each other. Yet when we go backwards in time, we realize how much we all come from the same place. We are all family. We really are all family. And all this nonsense should stop. But so this is one thing here that they're doing in 100 BC that the Neanderthals were doing. And you wonder, well, where did they get this idea from? The people in South America, the Polynesians, it's a different mix than the people who came through the Bering Strait. There's a few different people. Aborigines originally came. They think they may have been blown off course and skin boats. They have etchings in Australia on rocks of boats that the Aborigines drew. So it's quite possible that they were blown off course and they ended up in Chile. So and there's a stone down there that depicts the Aborigines getting killed, like a big war, getting killed by the new people, not the white people yet. The people who were coming down, either Polynesians or coming through Bering Strait. Yeah. Whoever these people were, they killed most of them off. So South America is made up of different people. And maybe they claim that some of these pyramids were built long before the Incas say, oh, they were here before we were here.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know, but I'm sure they can carbon date something. And maybe that is if they carbon date, of course, the pyramid could have been there, and then they could have dug the tunnel underneath it afterwards. They kind of reuse the pyramid. If that's the case.
A lot of people, they would find ancient civilizations and just inhabit them.
Yeah, well,
inhabit the rooms.
Right. So the interesting thing about this, and that's why I was excited we should have read this article first, because I think people, they try to understand everything that's going on. And there's a lot of information in a lot of these articles, and it would be nice if we had pictures, kind of like showing what's going on, the star, the colors. And I know I learn a lot by looking at things. I know a lot of people out there learn a lot by looking at things. And then you observe, and then you figure things out just by observing them without anybody telling you. That's the fun thing about observing things. When I found when I was I was under the age of 10. I may have been 5 or 6. In a river, I found a rock that looked like wood, and I thought to myself, this was wood, and over time it turned into a rock. And it kind of like I understood what fossilized wood was just by looking at it. I thought about how it came to be what it was.
Right.
It was a big rock. And my mother made me throw it back in the water. And it's like, no, I want to keep this. This is amazing. I don't know how I even found this in the water. But we can learn a lot just by observing things. And that's why pictures are fantastic. So this particular article has got these components where you've got some of the Neanderthal, and that could have been passed on.
Okay.
And these people could have somehow just could have passed on, and they could have some bit of Neanderthal in them. And this is hundreds of thousands of years later, but it could have been an old ritual that was passed on. And another thing is that this is under a pyramid, and this is where the grave is, and there's a lot of grave goods. And what this and this is in South America. And we always say, oh, well, South America, how did they get pyramids? Did the Egyptians go over to South, which they could have, because they found cocaine in mummies, right? So it's entirely possible. This is another piece of the puzzle. Does it connect? It doesn't necessarily connect with Egypt, even though there is a pyramid there. But there are pyramids in China, but they're made out of dirt, and they're pounded dirt. They had slaves, which are Chinese, and they would with a big piece of wood, they would pound the dirt all day, and then they would eventually drop dead because they wanted to pound the dirt down so compacted so tightly that it wasn't going to wash away. And so they dug a ditch on the side, so they would just kick the people over, and they would go right into their own graves. And very smart of the Chinese back then.
Well,
they just
in place.
Yeah, this funeral, big, even carrying the body, just kick it over the side. Just dig a ditch and kick it over the side. Underneath, there's nothing in the pyramid, but here they are building pyramids, just like Egypt's pyramids. They say, oh, the pyramids were not tombs. Well,
I think they became tombs. I don't think the Egyptians. I think the Egyptians found the pyramids. I think the Egyptians found those because there's evidence.
You think so?
There's evidence to suggest that the pyramids were there before the Egyptians got there.
Well, the people of Kush built pyramids like they saw, not exactly like they saw in Egypt. Slightly different style, smaller and smaller bricks.
They couldn't duplicate it.
They buried their dead underneath those pyramids. So they assumed the pyramids were tombs. But tombs is it's a resurrection machine. It's not, their idea, the Egyptians' idea of a tomb is it went from a pyramid where the pyramid is a ray of the sun. That's what it is. Okay. And then the pharaoh becomes the sun god, and he's responsible for bringing the sun back the next day. That's why he's buried in something that looks like the ray of the sun. The obelisks were the same things. The obelisks had gold capstones, which were pyramidions, small pyramids. And they said the pyramids had capstones of gold as well. These were all rays of the sun, and they had white limestone, and then a couple of them had red granite at the bottom and black granite, which is very attractive, like two layers of that. Actually very attractive. But their idea of a tomb and their idea of a tomb are two different things. One's a resurrection machine, and this is very important. And he was also responsible for the Nile flooding every year. So if you didn't send off your pharaoh in a good way, in the proper way, the whole civilization will fall. The sun's not going to rise. The Nile is not going to flood. And he becomes a god. So these are not, to them, they don't see them as tombs. That's why they mummify the dead. Because if the name is carved out, removed, and the image, the depiction in statue and the mummy itself,
Yeah.
if that's destroyed, then they're destroyed in the afterlife. So it's their idea of a tomb. We have to get off the fact, oh, it can't be a tomb. We have to get out of that, because they clearly thought of their pharaohs and death completely different. But anyway, Qi Shi Huang, who is the, are you still seeing me? Because my picture went blue.
I can see you.
You can see me in this 21-year-old computer, this screen. Here we are. We're back again. This is the emperor with the terracotta warriors of Shang.
Okay, that guy.
And not only were there these, was it 100,000 of those, and they were all completely different, and they were all painted differently, and they're all completely painted to look like they were alive. There's pits all over the place. One has terracotta horses and chariots. So all sorts of stuff. That the whole thing, after they dig it all up, is just amazing. But like the first pharaoh of Egypt, he was buried with, they killed the slaves, and then his courtesans were also killed and put in the grave with him. But then they stopped doing it, because they said, we're just throwing people in the grave when we need these people.
Yeah.
But in Kush, unfortunately, they kept doing that when a pharaoh died. They uncovered this pit that had 500 to 600 people in it, and they got some kind of I don't remember the name of it, but it was a plant that grew by the river that makes you fall asleep, and there were women and children and everything, and they ate that, they fell asleep, and they buried them in there, and they didn't stop doing. In other words, the Egyptians, just the first Menes, Narmer, or Menes, they say, was the pharaoh that united Upper and Lower Egypt, the land of the papyrus and the land of the lotus. So they stopped after that, but they kept doing it in Kush. And when Egypt was falling, the people of Kush came in, and at least they had their culture, and they believed in the gods, because they actually adopted all of them from the Egyptians. They admired it so much.
Excuse me.
And they say that is about the time when sub-Saharan African DNA mixed with Egyptian DNA. Because Egypt is people don't realize Egypt is on the corner of Africa, and it's budding Jordan, right? Mm-hmm. And it's right on the Mediterranean. And Egypt used to rule Egypt, Jordan, the whole Levant, Greece, and half of Italy at one time. And they had lookout towers. So the same people, we're talking about all the same people, basically lived in all those countries. Okay. So if you are, and they say Turkey as well, that's a part of the Levant. So if you've got genetics from any of those countries, you have the genetics of ancient Egyptians. But anyway, getting back to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, he's the one who he did an amazing job. His land was the Qin, and his father died, and there was a I forget what they call him. The guy who basically runs the palace said to him, "You have the power, and it is your destiny to conquer all these other countries and unite it as one China. And so they went and they plowed down all these other countries, and that's how China was united. There was a bunch of countries, and boom.
Yeah,
So he killed a lot of people. Killed a lot of people, made a lot of eunuchs. And when he was buried, you see, the similar thing about this particular pyramid that you just spoke of course, we got the flowers,
yep,
flowers thing, but the fact that they kind of built like a room under the pyramid, and it has artifacts, it has mercury rivers, so it's kind of like a place for the king, emperor to live. In Qin Shi Huang's, underneath his great pyramid, inside, they say that because there's documents, they knew, okay, they wrote, they knew how to write for I forget exactly, way back BC. This he ruled China in 246 BC. So this goes even further back than this particular pyramid.
Right, about 150 years.
Yeah, and he was born in 259 BC. And died in 210 at the age of 49. Oh yeah, you know the reason why he died. He was obsessed with living forever. That's the reason why the pyramid was so ornate, and all these, he has his army and the horses and these other pits that have all sorts of stuff buried in them, because he, at the end, he was starting to lose his mind. He wanted to, he didn't, first he was concentrating on building his tomb. Then he said, no, I want to live forever. I never want to die. So his Chinese medicine, the great Chinese medicine of the day, were mercury pills. Yes, he was told by his doctor, what do you call him, herbalist, this wasn't, he said that if you take mercury pills every day, that you will live forever. So he basically was losing his mind. And yeah, in a big way. And so he had, there was, where he is buried, of course they had to kill the courtesans, and they killed them by hanging them by silk scarves, and they had to be dressed in their finest, and they stood on these beautiful little stools and then hung them with silk scarves to be buried with him, of course. He's only 49. These are very, very, very young women. And also, these are the most beautiful women in all of China. What they do is they went out and they found the most beautiful women in all of China. And so in where he's buried, the descriptions that we have that were written thousands of years, more than a couple thousand years ago, said that the ceiling, which is very much like, when you look in a way, it's like, but it's much better. The tombs that you find in Egypt have, if you look, it's painted blue with stars. So basically, you're looking at the heavens. You're in your tomb and you're looking at the heavens. In his tomb, it was like that. The heavens were above, except it wasn't painted stars that didn't really look that attractive. They were painted in gold. It's one of the Egyptians did a lot of things fantastic. Some things they didn't do so great. In China, they did it beautifully. It was gems, huge gems that would glitter, and that they stuck in the ceiling to make the constellations and the moon. So the emperor would be looking up at that, and the entire layout of his tomb was his entire kingdom, but a small version of all of China, all the landscape of China. Can you imagine what this looks like? And the rivers were rivers of mercury. So do you think that it's possible? But they said they sealed this up, and they probably sealed the people up inside that built it, and they didn't realize this was going to happen, because they didn't want, the emperor didn't want the secrets to get let out about how to get in, what's in there, and how it's made. Even though they recorded this all, the way to actually get in to avoid booby traps, because they say if it's said, but it could be just a warning. I don't know how these things could work after 2,000 years, that there's arrows that will come through the walls and kill you. And some other things, one booby trap after another. May or may not be true, but it is a warning for anybody who wants to break in to the tomb. But I just think that's incredibly interesting. It's an incredibly interesting coincidence, there are pyramids in South America, though they were built long after the pyramids in Egypt, yes. And you got the flowers there, and then you got the Mercury River, but you also have underneath the pyramid, just like Qin Shi Huang's, underneath the pyramid, you have like a room with all the artifacts and Mercury rivers. So it sounds, I'd like to know about all the artifacts that they found. And so you can kind of go through them and see how closely it resembles Qin Shi Huang's. They said they thought it was just a story. You're like, oh, they're just making this up. This is so elaborate. It can't be like this. And when they found the terracotta army, and they found that every single one was life size in their armor, and looked, and each one was completely different. So each one was made after a soldier, one of his soldiers. And then they're finding these other pits. It's unbelievable. And the fact that this man could command people to do this kind of work. Can you imagine how long? He died at the age of 49.
He had to start early.
They started early. It's just it's really fascinating that I really would love to have them open that up, figure out how to open that up, because that would be an amazing thing to see. And I wonder if they could have preserved. So arsenic, they say, preserves you. Napoleon, they were giving Napoleon arsenic because they wanted to poison him, and his body is preserved. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
I mean, and they also as a gift, he gave everybody pieces of his hair, so he's bald. So we do have his DNA if we want to check that out. Yeah. So you kind of wonder, did they preserve him? Did they figure out a way to preserve him? I mean, they figured out how to do all this, and this is the most. As far any tomb in Egypt does not compare. This is the most magnificent thing I've ever heard of.
Pictures or just rumors?
No, they described it. They have the scribes of the palace of the Forbidden Kingdom wrote it all down. And they first thought this can't be. This is just too much. And until they found the Terracotta Army. And they just kept, and they found more and more. We're talking tens of thousands of life-size statues.
Tens of thousands.
In their armor. And each one has a different face. They're all different because they had to replicate each soldier exactly how he looked. That's why this emperor was very demanding.
I guess so.
in a huge way. And the artifacts and the artwork, the detail.
Cool. Thanks, Ian Randall.
It's amazing what the Egyptians did, but boy, this is unbelievable what the Chinese did. Yeah. Or say the Chinese were able to do, but the emperor demanded such a thing. And now the Communist Party of China there's more of these dirt pyramids all over China. And we know them from Google Earth. Right. What they did was they planted trees over all of them so we wouldn't see them. It's like we still can tell that's a pyramid. It's like,
you need to go on without me for a few minutes. I just need to use the Nature's Calling.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So, hello there. John Harrison is here, and we got Peace here, and Ian Randall from Australia. And I hear some terrible news coming out of Australia that you've got camps being built for people who are not well, and they expect to be using in 2022, and about what they did to those little puppies and those dogs in the dog shelter. Is this really what's going on in Australia? It sounds just horrific, and I hope you're not experiencing that. See, the Terracotta Army was inspired by the Macedonians. There was only a few hundred miles between the border of Greater Macedonia and China. The army even has Greek-looking figures. Greek-looking figures. Do they? I heard something about that sounds familiar. Greek-looking figures, because that they were thrown in. I think something else too. I'm like thinking about this, and I'm going, I think I've heard this some other, but they also it was a couple of civilizations that they mixed in, and I'm trying to figure out what other civilization this is. So people have had a lot of strange ideas down the centuries. At one point, radium was thought to be healthy until it turns people's jawbones into honeycombs. That's right, Peace. John Harrison. I read The Murder of Napoleon years ago. That's right. They murdered him slowly with arsenic. And see, the Chinese, Ian Randall says, again, the Chinese never made statues before or after the first emperor, like they made the Terracotta Army. But it's the same technique that the Greeks used while building their giant statues of Zeus. That's interesting. Didn't the giant statue of Zeus, where he's sitting down, it was made out of, they actually softened ivory. They were able to, forget the technique that they used to soften ivory. And so it would basically flatten out, and they would make it, and they would put it around wood. The base of it was wood. And they took the they were able to soften up the ivory and turn it almost like paper, covered in paper or something, or gold, but it's really ivory. And there was gold used to it. I think it's people heard termites. Termites got into it because the base of it was wood, and all of a sudden the thing just fell over. And that's so the terracotta army was built a little different than that big statue, because they're not sitting down. Because if he was standing up, he would just knock the whole roof off. It's so it's a little bit different than that, because one's terracotta and one was ivory and gold and a wood base. I do know about that. And there's also the statue of Athena that also collapsed. Hello there, Guy and Dor. Howdy. Ian Randall. Yes, it's horrible. And they are spraying kids with
pepper spray.
That's pepper spray. Oh my God. Why? Soak the ivory in Coca-Cola. They soak the ivory in something. I'm sure we could pull that up on the internet really fast. And I don't know if it's not, they didn't heat it. They soaked it. What would they have soaked it in? Adrian, would you know how they would soften ivory up to make it, to basically make the ivory flat, to unroll it, basically?
Made in phosphoric acid.
Phosphoric acid softens it, and then it hardens back up again after they put it around the wood base of the Zeus statue.
So it says here, it may be made soft and translucent by laying it in phosphoric acid of moderate strength, drying it in pure linen, previously rinsing it in water. When dry, it is translucent and hard, but will soften on being dipped in warm water and milk.
Interesting. You see that? Yeah. I remember that. I mean, I didn't remember the process. I forgot the process, but I knew that they softened it and how they made it. That's interesting. Yeah. It's my ex guitar teacher, who's a Democrat, he just, I called, basically said what they're doing is like Nazis, down, basically building camps. Like it's and he got just really mad at me. It's like, there's only one person that's the Nazi, and it's not Hitler. To a Democrat. It's like, no, please, research what they're doing. People are going crazy. We have to.
Hypnosis, right?
Say it again?
It's mass hypnosis, right? You've got a suggestion that's repeated over and over again with high emotion, and that's how you hypnotize people.
Yeah.
Itchy slogans.
It's scary what's happening. That's why the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, first of all, they don't want me to report the news. So I said, okay, if they don't want me to report the news, then I won't do it. So I'm doing this. And I have another channel. BitChute will be current events, though I haven't been uploading to that as much, and I really should. But I'm here more. But part of me feels that we need something else when we read these articles, these discoveries of science and physics, and especially when we look at there's an article on a tetraquark, which is oldest type of quark, and they can't quite figure out how this thing is holding together. And it's the oldest type of quark, the atom, the
longest lived.
Speaking of the Greeks, they came up with the idea of the atom, and then if you keep smashing the atom, then you get it. Quarks are the smallest. But to discuss what we're discussing here reminds you of what is in humankind, what is in creation, what is in us, to be able to be more than just these mortal beings that have a little time limit. It's amazing what mankind has discovered about the creation of the universe, things, the boson, the collider that smashes,
Yep.
that watches the particles going around and smashes them, and found the boson Higgs particle, and now found this other particle that's doesn't make any sense to anyone. It has two matter and two antimatter molecules in it, and also something else. I read it quickly. I forget. It's like it's a brand new, or it's the oldest, but we've just discovered it. And we realize that there's more. There's so much more to us, and the only way we're going to really survive through all this BS, because they're throwing BS at us every day. Look, how could anyone have messed up Afghanistan that badly?
Money.
Any of us could have been in that room and been present, I think, and would have thought of something better. I don't think they can't be listening to him. He can't be making the decisions. Especially a decision like that, there are other people, like people in the military, that will say, no, you can't do that because of this will happen and this will happen. So we can't go that route. So I kind of wonder, I do have my ideas about that whole thing. It's funny, a lot of the ideas I've had, wait a minute, I thought it first. It's really interesting. A lot of stuff I've said way back when in my when I first started doing these videos, I'm going, oh my God, I thought of that already, about what Antifa was. It's working for the state. They're the brown shirts, and was Tim Pooltart start to talk about the other day. They're the brown shirts. They work for the state. That's exactly that's how I started my channel. It's like, there's so many things. And Russell Brand today said something. It's like, wait a second. That's awesome. But nobody listens. So you good souls out there, listen to me. The good souls out there, listen to me. But it's unbelievable. I'm saying, my God, it was so easy to see. It was so obvious. And it's like, it's just dawning on you people now. It's dawning. Look at, I'm sure these other people have got grander educations than I have. But you know history. You just know history, and you know what you're seeing.
Well, it gets rewritten by the people in power. It's so they can repeat it.
Exactly.
We don't learn from history because it's taken out of our books.
Right. We are the example. I just throw one example, just because, so you understand what I'm talking about. Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver were both slaves, and they were freed, of course. Booker T. Washington started Tuskegee University, and George Washington Carver became his botany professor. Now, this man was a slave, and the university, this was a university for African Americans, or at the time, for these freed slaves, right?
Yeah, okay.
And Booker T. Washington was a genius. He was a slave. He was a genius. And what he said, watch out for these liberals, because they're telling you that you're victims. Way back then, they were saying that. And he said there's a group of freed slaves that are living on victimhood, that you're a slave, you can only be a slave. And he said, that's my past. I am not a slave. I never was a slave. That's what that happened to me in my past, but that's not who I am.
Right.
I can overcome this. We can overcome this. And he was warning about the liberals. They were convincing the freed slaves that you'll only be the liberals, was the Democrats. You'll only be. This is what you'll be. You can't do anything else. Way back then, and George Washington Carver never went to college. I'm sure he had some schooling of some kind because he could read and write. And the way he devised his botany lab was his students, he told the students, we can't afford to build a lab to do all these botany experiments. Let's go to the junkyard. We'll go to the dump and we'll find all the stuff we need there. And we're going to build what we need. And this is a man who was a slave. You can't tell me if this I'm sure his family generations in this country were several generations were slaves. From slavery, he became a botany professor without going to college for it. Booker T. Washington built a university and told people to stop feeling that you're not a victim. You're not a slave and you're not a victim. Stop this victim mentality.
Right.
That is not who you are. That was done to you. That is not who you are. These are two different things. We have to remember, if somebody who can live their lives, as most of their lives, a great deal of their lives, into adulthood as slaves, and then become something that people have to go to college to learn. And they didn't need to do that. They built their own college. George Washington Carver never got married. He slept in a very small bed, like in a above the classrooms. A very humble man, very interesting. You look at his face and it kind of glows. His eyes glow. It's like there's like light coming off of him. I'm fascinated by him. But it says if they can do that and they can retain that inside of them, they didn't lose it and they didn't become broken. We can also, because
right, you want to maintain yourself.
Yeah. We most of us weren't born slaves, but a lot of us were treated like slaves. Adrian and myself can tell you that. But look at what you can do even if you were a slave. If they can do it, you can do it. And they have a place in history. Was it C.J. Walker was the first in the turn of the century? We're talking about not 2000. We're talking about 1899 to 1900, turn of the century. C.J. Walker, she was a woman. She was the first millionaire female in the world. And she was a former slave. And so it wasn't Oprah. maybe Oprah's the reincarnation. But think about that. That's amazing. So no matter what is going on, we have to retain who we are. We must keep ourselves. We must not let go of who we are and our possibilities. I mean, look at these incredible discoveries.
Yeah.
And what people have done throughout the ages. We are a people, humanity has been beaten down time and time again.
Surprised there's anything left of us.
That's really right. And we keep coming back, and we somehow have moved forward and are able to find tetraquarks I mean, we build telescopes so we can see these condensed stars that are pulsating radio waves of color, and we know what they are. This is amazing that the mind of man could have built these things and figured it out. And we're talking everything we've discussed tonight throughout time. We went through archaeology and DNA and the evolution of man getting stronger and wiser and smarter as the years, and everybody has been conquered. There isn't any civilization that hasn't been enslaved. And recently they discovered in sub-Saharan Africa, they discovered tombs of kings, and he had slaves buried with him. And they were all sub-Saharan African. It's so slavery has been all over the world. People enslaved their own people. The Egyptians enslaved everyone. The people of Kush, the Assyrians, Hyksos, who they think may be the Hebrews. They still aren't sure. They enslaved everybody. The Egyptians. Everyone has been beaten down. Everyone has been throughout time. Our ancestors. And we lived through horrible conditions. Or we were kings and then we fell. And yet we're here. And somehow we have, today, we can look through a telescope and see, how many hundreds of thousands of light years away. We can see the beginnings of the Big Bang, the expansion of the universe. We can see all these things. We figured out how the heck did they find a quark? I mean, how the heck do you break an atom down to all, and what it's made up of: matter, antimatter. It's in this one tetraquark, which is the oldest quark that ever existed. And the Higgs boson is the one that gives mass to all the other atoms. How the heck did we figure this stuff out? How can we say that we're defeated or that we will be defeated? And this is worse, or this is so bad. And the whole world, we can't say that. We can't live in that world. We are human beings, and we have lived in this world. And if you go back through time and you dig up these graves and you say, they did this back then, and then you come forward, and former slaves became professors without going to college, barely any schooling, just genius, decided, I'm not a victim, I'm not a slave. It was done to me, but it is not me. I am so much more than this.
Well, hopefully the tyrannical grip on our people will be loosened up, and sometime in the future we can do that again.
We have to. That's how we carry on, is that we have to know who we are, and we have to know what we can be. If we figured all this out, and we've only advanced throughout time, we've learned more and more, and we've invented plastic. I mean, come on. We are a civilization that invented plastic, something that unless it's broken down, it will never break down. You see, now there's an algae that they found that will break plastic down to its base components. And you can make any color plastic, any kind of plastic. So it isn't that we have to, this is this color and this is that color, and recycling is so difficult. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of all the stuff to recycle. but they found a particular kind of algae that can break down all this plastic to its base ingredients or the base components of plastic. And that's amazing. And we never stop inventing, and we've still, no matter what we've been through, all the wars, all the destruction, all the killing, all the threefold deaths, we've been through, we've still advanced. We keep advancing. So we can't say that this is going to bring us down. This is going to kill us. This is going to be the nail in the coffin. It's not, and it never has been. Just think about what these people have suffered. The Aztecs, you bringing 5,000 to 6,000 people a day. They sacrificed. They either cut their hearts out while they were still alive, take a bite out of it, and then they would throw the body down the pyramid and they would cannibalize it. Or they would flay people alive by cutting the skin off in one piece and then putting it on, because they had a god that would wear skin. And that's what they did. And even the Braves in North America did that. They went and they stole a brave from another tribe. And then
it wasn't all kumbaya here. Yeah.
Yeah, and they flayed them alive. And they held slaves. All of them fought with each other, killed each other. They find some thousands of people, 2 weeks. They tortured them for 2 weeks before they killed them. I mean, we have been through so much. Humanity. This is all of humanity. We have been through so much. We have to be strong, and we have to know that we're going to get through this. And all these things I'm presenting to you is to remind you of who we have been, how humanity has progressed. No matter what we've done to each other, we come back together again. By gum, all sorts of races mixed together. We don't, as much as they tell us that we hate each other, we're not so apart, because look at all of us. We're mixed. A lot of us are very mixed. We still come together, and there's groups of us, a segment of us that wants peace. There will always be that segment that wants peace, and there will always be a segment that doesn't want peace. But we have to remember that or have faith in these people that do want peace. We want peace. We want to live through this. And we have to never forget who you are. You are, just like Booker T. Washington says, you're not a slave. That's what was done to you. That's not who you are. So Ian Randall, neutron star, next election cycle, they're getting kicked out. Good. We're backing you 100%. And Adrian in the prison that Trudeau is creating, they won't let him out. Otherwise, he'd be down here.
Trudeau keeps fucking us over.
It's like,
you know what? I don't want to get too political on your channel.
I know. It's like,
it's a disappointment. I mean,
when they let you out, we can do the show.
If they let me out, we'll see. I might be a political prisoner. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't want to get the vaccine, so I'll probably go into a camp. That's probably what's going to happen.
Well,
we have FEMA camps in Canada. They got fresh railroad tracks. They take old warehouses and turn them into camps. I don't want to get into it.
I know, and that's what's happening in Australia, and we've got them here too. But they're finding that we're going to be needing a booster. First it was 8 months, and now they're saying 5.
Sure. Yeah. Why?
And I heard that on Tim Pool, and if he could say that on a live stream, I can say it on a live stream. So he said several other things that I'm not going to say, but you can watch his live stream from, I think it was last night. He was talking to Steve Bannon. I think it was Steve Bannon he was talking to. So he was saying, next, okay, we all have to do it. The Nazis will be gone. Like I said, yeah, they're Nazis. That's why all Central America sided with the Spaniards. That's right. They were sick and tired and petrified of being slaughtered. It's like, I stand with the people that were victims. I don't stand with the people that were killing them. Let's see, the Australian Aboriginals would leave a person to die just because they are injured. They had slaves, killed, and ate each other. Well, there you go.
Human tradition.
It's the Western society that has polluted us, we've stopped eating each other. It's just terrible. If we just lived more in a natural environment without fossil fuels. I won't get into that.
Shall we get into the article?
But let's see. All Christians want peace, mate. I don't know who has a worse government, yours or mine. Thank God you don't live in New Zealand. Wasn't there a time, do you remember, Ian Ratto, that wasn't that long ago, maybe about 10 years ago, that people wanted to move to New Zealand? I don't know, it was Lord of the Rings. They realized how beautiful New Zealand was. And you had to, it's very hard to move there. You have to have a lot of money. I know Australia is the same way. You have to buy land and have so many hundreds of $1,000s in the bank to move there. But in this country, as long as you come through the southern border, that's the reason why California is, there's so many homeless people, because the housing prices have gone up that they can't afford to stay in their houses. Yet we have people going over the border and getting right into housing. So there's something, to me, there's something amiss about this. So we can't do this.
Well, and
I can't believe, I can't believe they thought of this and wanted this. I mean, it's like they must, or they did it because of I should say they did it because of incompetence. They must have wanted this, because it doesn't take much to say, hey, that's not going to work very well for anybody if you do it this way. You got to do it a different way. If you want this, you got to do it a different way, so everybody's safe.
What the government wants and what we want are different things.
Yeah, and people are not homeless. It was just just in feces. I mean, California will soon be not on dirt. It'll just be a big feces used needles pile. What is this? What is this state made of? You're right. Just breathe deeply. And that's what California, so hopefully Larry Elder have a good chance of, and hopefully he can do something. But they're accusing him of being Clayton Bigsby. You know who Clayton Bigsby is?
Nope.
Anybody? You never saw Dave Chappelle?
I've seen Dave Chappelle a couple of times.
Larry Elder is African American. He's his mother and father. He's not biracial, mother and father. So they're calling him a white supremacist, even though he's black. No, Larry Elder.
Okay.
And yeah, he's adopted the white supremacy movement and is working for them. Well, Dave Chappelle did a skit. His name was Clayton Bigsby in it. And he was a black white supremacist. And he was blind. That's why he didn't know he was black. So he supposedly he went to a school for the blind. All these kids were blind. And the teacher at the school just said, oh, we just told him he was white. You know, nobody could see him and he couldn't see anybody else. We told him they were all white, so he thinks he's white. So he became, and he wrote a bunch of books. I won't say the names of the books. It's look it up. It's Chappelle, the black white supremacist. And he's a white supremacist, and he really thinks that it's so good, so well done. Do find that, look that up on
wow.
YouTube.
Ian Randall, that's disturbing.
Oh, what's he saying?
So New Zealand has just left people behind in Afghanistan, given the Taliban 2 million and legalized abortion up until the cord is cut. That's just fucking murder.
Oh my God. I know they said that there is no plan to get the Americans out of Afghanistan.
The left ruins everything it touches.
There's honestly, there's something that I'm thinking in my head, and I can't say it, but it's an interesting theory, and it's a very plausible theory, and I don't dare say it here. You don't dare say it here. I definitely should make a video on BitChute and say it there.
Contentious videos by
Yeah.
Wicked Felina.
So, did you want to read about that tetraquark, or do you want me to read? Because it's very interesting, that tetraquark.
I read the last one. You go ahead.
Okay. The article about the sea snakes, I thought, was actually kind of funny. Oh. I think that's in the next.
So what's going on?
Yeah, I think I'm looking for it. I think it's in the next. Here we are. This is on. Maybe I didn't copy it.
Should I read something while you're looking for it?
You've got it.
I have all the articles here. I got a list.
Mine aren't live links.
Oh.
For some reason, after I send the email to you, mine are no longer live links.
Oh, interesting.
So you go ahead if you want to read that.
Sure. Well, I want to read the one with the brain. The brain in the
organic. Oh, the brain one. Okay, go ahead. That is interesting.
It just makes me laugh. There's a whole brain in a jar. So, lab-made mini brains grow their own sets of eyes. Scientists recently grew mini brains with their own sets of eyes, according to a new study. Organoids are miniature versions of organs that scientists can grow in a lab from stem cells, or cells that can mature into any type of cell in the body, which are stem cells. Previously, scientists have developed tiny beating hearts, tear ducts, that could cry like humans' tear ducts do. Scientists have even grown mini brains that produce brain waves like those of preterm babies. What an interesting existence to have as that brain. Now a group of scientists has grown mini brains that have something like the real counterparts do not. A set of eye-like structures called optic cups that give rise to the retina, the tissue that sits in the back of the eye and contains light-sensing cells. In the human body, the retina sends signals to the brain via the optic nerve, allowing us to see images. In the mammalian brain, nerve fibers of retinal ganglion cells reach out to connect with their brain targets, an aspect that has never before been shown in an in vitro system. Senior author there's a name, J. Gopalakrishnan, A researcher at the University of Hospital Dusseldorf said in a statement, ganglion cells are neurons located in the inner surface of the retina that communicate directly with the brain. Previously, researchers had grown optic cups individually in labs, but this is the first study that integrated optic cups into brain organoids, according to the statement. Gopalakrishnan and his team adopted a technique they previously developed for turning stem cells into neural tissue in order to create mini brains with optic cups. Once the stem cells had developed into mini brains, the organoids formed optic cups. The optic cups appeared as early as 30 days and matured within 50 days, a time frame similar to how the retina develops in a human embryo, according to the statement. In total, the researchers created 314 mini brains, and 72 of them formed optic cups. The organoids contained different types of retina cells that formed active neuron networks that responded to light, according to the statement. The organoids also formed lens and corneal tissue. Our work highlights the remarkable ability of brain organoids to generate primitive sensory structures that are light sensitive and harbor cell types similar to those found in the body, Gopalakrishnan said in a statement. Why are scientists drawing mini brains like these in a lab? These organoids can be useful for studying human brain development and related diseases. Scientists could use the new organoids, with their optic cups, to study brain-eye interactions during embryo development. Gopalakrishnan said, I read that wrong. What's more, they can be used to study retinal disorders and maybe even be used to create personalized retina cell types for therapies. The researchers now hope to figure out how to keep the optic cups viable for a long time and use them to research the mechanisms behind retinal disorders. So here's what I want to know. What's going on in the mind of these mini brains? They had 314 mini brains growing with optic. Imagine that you're just on a cookie sheet. You're in a petri dish. That's your life. You can just see a little bit of light moving around. You're aware of something, maybe. How much awareness would a brain that size have? It looks very small.
Those are people. I mean, that's what, when you lose your brain. I mean that's it. You're dead.
Yeah.
That's what.
I mean, is it like an insect brain? I mean, how much individualization does an insect have? Very interesting.
It's those are people, and they're made out of stem cells. They're not just grown out of nothing. They're made out of stem cells, and would be stem cells from brains. I think it's. I mean, it's. See, if somebody lost their brain, is there any way? Well, if you could you regrow the brain of somebody who had brain damage? So therefore, you take some of the stem cells and you regrow the brain from that person. And would you be able to give them back their mind, fully functioning brain? It's like they had brain damage. Or they say, oh, this baby can't survive. Well, we can grow it a new brain. We can just take some of the stem cells and grow the brain. Material. Actually, there was a baby that they told the parents would be born without a brain. Or I guess it was just a small, it was nothing really.
Yeah, some people have like
it would be completely, it was caved in, and would completely, what would you call that? A type of person who just, had
vestigial,
a little bit of white.
Vestigial.
A little bit of vestigial.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was, after the child was born, the parents didn't want to abort the child, which I know personally of people who have done that more than once, because they a gene, they both carry a certain gene, and who knew after this child was born, the child's brain grew. The child's brain grew after the child was born, from like a very little bit of a brain to a fully functioning brain. And it's like, how can we say this is not viable or this is going to be that? We have no idea. There's also
Well, I think
there
they're
was a
semi-real.
child with was born dead. It was dead for 3 hours or 6 hours. It's a huge amount of time, and then all of a sudden the baby took its first breath and wasn't dead. And it's like the mother just held it and loved it, and everybody was in the room just loving the child. And then all of a sudden the child took its first breath after hours. Like, there's no way this baby could be alive. We can't make these assumptions when these kinds of things happen, and they're completely, so it's miraculous, but maybe that's just we are not so mortal as we think we are. We're not so we're not so fragile. Our lives aren't so fragile. Even a baby's life is so incredibly fragile, and without lots of help, it will never survive. But look at what happens. It's like these miraculous things happen. So it means that we have our biological system has the capacity to do so much more than we give it credit for.
Right.
We're so easy to just throw it in the trash can or send it to a lab so they can mix it with mice or give some other more deserving baby an organ that it needs. It's just it's just awful. It's just we can be so good. Humans can be so good, and we can be so awful.
It's quite a range.
And it's in the animal kingdom too. We say that but they're not. No, they abandon their babies. I've seen chimps. Mother gives birth to the baby, and they're all eating the baby. That's one thing that the people don't know. All the experiments that the Japanese did. One thing was that they fed a woman's baby to her. She had to eat her own baby. They did so. We know all about the Nazis, but we do not know about the experiment. Well, I know a lot about them, but the experiments were just horrific that the Japanese did to people who were not Japanese, to Americans or people who are not aligned with Japan. And we think, oh, it's only the Nazis. Read about the Japanese.
They get the most press, but other places have higher numbers of deaths, abuse.
Oh, it's comparable. It's totally comparable. It's unbelievable. I mean, I could go into some right now. Other than the mother eating her own baby, making her do that, just absolutely horrible experiments that they did on the American soldiers. Well, obviously they were alive and conscious. I kind of don't even want to describe it, but
that's all right. We can move on to the next thing.
We look, there are books out there, but we only think the Nazis had a lot of money to do a lot of stuff.
They were in business with the Democrats. That's what they were doing. They were talking anyway. Sorry, you know what? I didn't want to get political. Again.
We always say, oh, we put Japanese in internment camps, but we put Germans and Italians in internment in this country, but they never mention the Germans and the Italians.
Yeah, we Canada had
the Japanese. Say we can only mention the one that's technically not white, but as far as college goes, they're white, and they knock points off, SAT scores off, and they earn more money than white people do. As a whole, they all do earn more money, and like Pelosi says, privilege. It's like, oh, what we did the Japanese. Well, I think it's awful everybody. I think that was bad. I think the Japanese were here because they didn't want to be in Japan. They wanted to be Americans. I think it's a terrible thing, but it's like you forget the other people who suffer too. There were other people in those internment camps that weren't Japanese, and Pelosi's Italian. So why aren't you mentioning the Italians that were thrown in there? I know you don't want to mention the Germans, but because you don't want to mention white people, FDR's, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, threw white people in internment camps for 10 years. It was terrible. They lost everything. Many people died there. But we forget that. And also Nancy Pelosi never says it was the Democrat Party that did it. FDR was a Democrat. He's just like, it's as if Trump is going to be doing this. It's like, wait a second, your man was a Democrat. That's your man. It's like, please stop. Don't come back. Oh, don't drink the whole river, Augustus.
Yeah.
The pride of Dusselheim. So did you want, okay, they're going way too far with labeling folks by immutable characteristics and defining them. That's not freedom. That's right, Amy Joyce. Ian Randall says, it is war, and you should lock up your enemy or kill them.
Yeah. Yeah, we're at war. People don't seem to realize that we're at war. We've been at war since the 1900s with ourselves. We just don't. Anyway, you know what? Sorry. I got a little excited about that.
Hey, look, Lemon Pepper Wings is in the building. Lemon Pepper Wings 69 is in the building. So watch what you're saying, because we don't know what Lemon Pepper Wings 69 is going to do. Yeah, there must be like chicken wings.
I like lemon pepper. Lemon pepper
might be awesome. The favorite way of cooking chicken wings, lemon pepper.
It's pretty good stuff.
I love lemon pepper, yeah, on chicken. That's great. So, did you want to read a paranormal thing?
Yeah, let's get into some of the paranormal stuff.
Go out with a smile.
Sure. So what we had were links to paranormal stuff. Here, 1 second. I'm going to send you the link, Michelle. If you look in the private chat, in the private chat channel, there's the link to the paranormal stuff that you sent me. Sorry, I can't comment with all the with the audience. I'd like to be able to, but I can't quite do that.
It's still loading. Looks like my Wi-Fi is slow. See, I wish I had that voice. The voice that's not the asthma voice. I always get, there must be something about doing these streams that I...
Well, you could do vocal warm-ups.
Well, yeah, I tried to do that. I must be talking in a different... it's like, I have a completely lovely speaking voice. And I heard it today in an old video, a video that I never posted. I went, oh my God, that's my real voice. But I did mow the lawn and I am allergic to grass. So I probably shouldn't have done that before doing a live stream.
Yeah. So Ian Randall, I don't actually know who we've been at war with since the 1900s. I just know that there's been an influx of Marxism from somewhere. I don't know where the Marxism came from, but it's been infiltrating for a long time. That's what I know, but I don't know who is doing it. I think it's our own government. Where does that come from? I mean, I don't know the source, but I can see the damage, and the damage says it's war. So that's where I'm at with that.
You know what? I think you're going to have to do the page came up, but it keeps saying page unresponsive. Well, there's a lot of good stuff here. There is a lot of good stuff.
Can yourself survive death? 7 of those. These aren't as in depth as I was hoping, but I'll read one. Let's see. The Evil Eye, a closer look. That's from 2017. Everyone gets a dirty look now and then, and we usually think little of it, especially if we deserved it. Most of us, it's soon shrugged off, but in many places, belief in the evil eye is taken very seriously and requires immediate action to avoid harm. The evil eye is a human look believed to cause harm to someone or something. The supernatural harm may come in the form of a minor misfortune or more serious disease, injury, even death. Folklorist Alan Dundas, in his edited volume The Evil Eye, a casebook, notes that victims' good fortune, good health, or good looks, or unguarded comments about them invite or provoke an attack by someone with the evil eye. Symptoms of illness caused by the evil eye include loss of appetite, excessive yawning, hiccups, vomiting, and fever. If the object attacked is a cow, its milk may dry up. If it's a plant or fruit tree, it may suddenly wither and die. The evil eye is also said to cause a number of other maladies, including insomnia, fatigue, depression, and diarrhea. In many places, disease is considered a magical as well as a medical issue, and the reason a given person succumbs to a malady may be attributed to a curse instead of a random chance or exposure to a virus. It can even affect objects and buildings. The evil eye cast upon a vehicle may break down. The evil eye cast upon a vehicle may break down irreparably, while a house so cursed may soon develop a leaky roof or an insect infestation. Just about anything that goes wrong may be blamed on the power of the evil eye. Well, the evil eye in history is well known throughout history. It is mentioned in ancient Greek and Roman texts, as well as in many famous literary works, including the Bible, such as Proverbs 23:6, "Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats." The Quran and Shakespeare's plays. Though belief in the evil eye is widespread, it is not universal. A 1976 cross-cultural survey by folklorist John Roberts found that 36% of cultures believed in the evil eye. The evil eye is essentially a specific type of magical curse and has its roots in magical thinking and superstition. Let's say that a person experiences bad luck, ill health, accident, or some unexplained calamity, perhaps a drought, or an infectious disease. Before science could explain weather patterns and germ theory, any bad event for which there was not an obvious cause might be blamed on a curse. Curses, including the evil eye, are an answer to the age-old question of why bad things happen to good people. Not self-sabotage or self-loathing. Eyes are said to have special powers. They are said to be the gateway to a person's soul. Shifting eyes are said to subtly betray liars, while a steady gaze may be endearing or menacing, depending on the circumstances. Eye contact can create an intensely personal connection, whether between lovers or superiors and subordinates. Glaring or an intense staring can convey power and authority over another.
Or it could be psychotic.
Yes. Of course, actors use their eyes to convey a wide range of emotions, including love, hate, disgust, boredom, scorn, surprise, and envy. In fact, it is this last emotion, jealousy, that underlies the evil eye's cultural association with magic. Belief in the power of the eyes is so powerful that any eye affliction has come to suggest evil and bad luck. People who are cross-eyed or have uncontrollable eye twitches or spasms, a condition called blepharospasm, or who merely have a prominent squint, have been shunned and feared as provoking bad luck, especially among those who work in dangerous occupations, such as fishing and mining. I'm reminded here of Popeye the Sailor, who has a squinty eye. Is it evil? We don't know. Similarly, those with unusually close-set eyes, or eyes of different colors, were often suspected of having evil eye. David Bowie has different colored eyes?
Actually, he's got he was hit in the face by a friend of his in the schoolyard, and it paralyzed the iris. He actually doesn't have two different color eyes. There's a name for it. I'm sure you can pull that up right away. My father had the same thing. He was hit in the eye with a baseball, and his eye changed color too. So he had the same thing happen to him. Um, but Bowie has a paralyzed iris. But
That's too bad.
you think it's a different color, but it's not.
Well, it looks a different color.
Yeah, but he was born with blue eyes. My father was born with blue eyes as well, and they both were hit in the eye. Well, one was a buddy of his, and they have the name of the guy that hit him, and I think it was over a girl. And my father was playing baseball, and the ball went right into his eye. And he said that he's blind in that eye, and he was a traveling salesman. I mean, he drove his car till, about a couple years, before he died, with one eye, and was able to read and pass the eye exam. And he never told anyone he was blind in one eye. I think that's pretty amazing. I just like, I have to hand it to him. You're traveling salesman, he would even, in the beginning, he would travel down to New Orleans. I mean, just really far places before he buried my mother. That's amazing. So you just adapt. You just totally adapt. I think Bowie could see out of both eyes. It depends on how bad the injury was. My father's injury was probably worse. We always thought that he had one blue eye, one green eye, but he was actually born with blue eyes, and it was because one eye was damaged.
Okay. I didn't know that about your dad.
I'm sure you didn't look deeply into his eyes.
Not often.
Yeah.
Belief in the power of the eyes is so powerful that any eye affliction has come to suggest evil and bad luck. Oh, I got that already. Babies and children are said to be especially susceptible to harm from the evil eye. And in many countries, including Greece, Romania, and India, praising a child publicly is sometimes considered taboo, for the compliment will draw the attention of the evil eye. In order to ward off the evil eye, parents of a thoughtlessly praised child may ask a person who gave the compliment to immediately spit in the child's face. Because the momentarily exalted youngster has been brought down a peg, any harm by the evil eye is unnecessary. The spittle is harmless, yet insulting enough to negate the compliment. That's quite simple. Who has the evil eye? Maybe you do. Many believe that a bad intention is not necessary, and that someone can cast an evil eye without even knowing it. Is that like resting bitch face? If one person
it's supposed to be. Well, in Italy, it's malocchia, 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 which means mal is bad, and occhia is eye, bad eye. And then you say it 3 times, malocchia, malocchia.
Wow.
Baloney. It's baloney. Believe me, I've tried it to try to help mankind.
Yeah.
And it hasn't worked. It definitely split in the It's terrible. You come with a child, you have to spit in their face. What the hell thought of it? Because they have the evil eye in Italy, but thank God they didn't think of spitting in the child's face. I never heard of that one.
I've never been inclined to hit a child. I mean, spit in a child's face. Yes,
it is good luck,
I think
spit 3 times on someone.
I didn't get a whole lot of praise as a kid, but would I want? Would you want the praise if it meant you got spit in the face too? I don't know.
Don't praise me. To be you can't look. You know what? You can't what do you call it, ward off the evil eye. There's no way during COVID to do that, because spitting in the face, I would think, would be against the rules. So, you just have to accept the bad luck of the evil eye.
What if the person with the evil eye is wearing polarized sunglasses? Does the evil get polarized on the way out? Does it?
With the evil eye.
If you have the evil eye and you're wearing sunglasses, does it still perform evil, or does it get blocked by the filter?
I would think that if you can see through them, evil can pass through lenses.
Maybe it's less evil.
I think so.
I don't know.
That makes it less evil. Maybe there should be smiley faces on the eye.
Yeah.
Oh.
So apparently, if one person is believed to have the evil eye, other members of his or her family are often treated with suspicion, and any children are assumed to have the curse as well. This does not bode well.
That means the whole family would drop dead. I mean, if the whole family's got the evil eye, then they're giving bad luck to each other. It's like, how is this family functioning? Do they eat? I mean, are they keeping up their work and putting food on the table and roof over their head? That kind of negates the whole idea that evil eye is the whole family. If you assume that the whole family has it, unless the whole family is like sitting in a ditch poking berries up their nose with a stick. They must see the evil eye. Makes sense. Look at them. Otherwise, clearly, the evil eye.
Yeah.
So, and I told you how to do it, and it does not work. Believe me. I tried to heal this earth and everything that's going on that's bad in the world with the Malakia, and it didn't work. Okay, didn't work. And I'm half Italian, so I've got the power, but it doesn't work. Absolutely superstition. In Italy, evil eye is everything is takes your potency. A man is not able to, and everything has to do with fertility. And if a man cannot, if he needs that little blue pill, that's what the evil eye does. But it's in Italy, everything is to prevent that from happening for some reason. And it goes all the way back, to Roman times. They would have a phallus made out of metal hanging outside their door for good luck. So it's got like because, or they had mudras, which are hand symbols, like the mano figu, which is this, that's a sexual thing, or this, which they say it's not the horns. This is not the devil horns. This is a sex act. This is the woman and the man, and this is the man. And what you do is you're supposed to do that first before someone throws the evil eye at you. That way, if you combat the evil eye, the evil with potency, and that's why that the thing
needs
there
more yang.
And even men, even when it changed from Roman to Christian in the when did the Medicis rule? Medicis, Renaissance. They used to, every man had a cod piece,
right?
That was that they wore outside of their trousers.
Yeah, on the underwear
outside. It was the same color of the trousers, except it was, of course, it was big and it was erect. And it somehow that prevented bad luck or it prevented you from becoming impotent. Everything in Italy is to ward off impotency. That's just the worst thing that could ever happen from Roman times all the way up. And that's why they have all these different charms that they wore, like chimarutas and stuff. And on the chimaruta is all these things like swords and snakes and things that kind of represent the, you know what? And that's supposed to ward off everything. It actually wards off witches. People call it, oh, this is a witch's charm. No, it's to ward off witches doing a spell that fell on you. That's what it actually is. You'd even put it in your crib of your baby to protect your baby from the witches. But everything in Italy is.
No, I haven't seen those gourds.
It's unbelievable. It's like, wow. A country, a civilization from Roman times to today, built around non Jew, do that to me.
Well,
non-Jew, I'll do it to you first. So the potency of the sexual act is like magic. Is sex? The sex act is technically was always viewed as magical. The fact that the man can, you know what I mean? And then a baby is born and fertility, that's magic. How the hell does that happen? How does a human being come out from that? That's magic. So to ward off evil, you have to do that first. That's the most powerful magic there is some kind of showing potency, you know what I mean? And that wards off because everybody for some reason wants to make you impotent.
The ultimate curse. Aha.
It is the ultimate curse. It's like, you shall have no children, you shall be impotent. You're not a man. Everything is not a man anymore. And then, of course, the women wasn't good for the women either if the men couldn't do that. Couldn't have children, you couldn't pass on your seed. I mean, that showed there was a lot that said about a man when he passes on his seed to the next generation and his children get more powerful and prosperous. It's just like, can't have that happen. But I just think it's just amazing. Like everything, every hand mudra represents the sex act and the charms. Life size, huge metal hanging up, not wing chimes. Is that a wing chime?
Yeah.
No.
Well, like, Felina's getting that time again.
Oh yeah.
I gotta get going.
Yep. Yeah, we better go. That was a fun time. It's too bad that it's too bad. Well, hopefully we'll get in replays. People will see what a fun time this show actually was. And anyway.
Yeah, thanks everyone for your comments in the comment fields. Thanks so much.
ISIS used to wear that. Ian saying ISIS used to wear concrete cod pieces or bits of concrete just so when they die, the organ will still be there.
Right, you don't want to get your nuts blown off. Yeah.
Well, Jenna, it's you're thinking of paradise in Islam, Jana, and it's the duat that's paradise in Egypt, in ancient Egypt. But she couldn't find Osiris's phallus because Seth, his brother, broke him up into pieces and scattered him all over Egypt. And the only thing she couldn't find was the phallus. Supposedly it was eaten by an alligator. First thing they eat. Yeah. And so she formed one out of gold. And then she became a kite, which is like a bird. And you see her flying above it. So it's not a virgin birth. She's actually having sex with him, but he's a god, and gods, gold and skin of gods are supposed to be gold, though he had green skin. But she actually had to perform the sex act with her dead husband to get pregnant with Horus. So,
all right. Well,
so this is that's it. I know a lot about ancient history and archaeology, don't I? So
yeah.
anything. Thank you, Adrian, for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show and letting me read a little bit for you.
And you're until you understand all this physics. You understand?
Well, I mean, I follow along basically. I wouldn't be able to answer a dissertation on it or write my own textbook, but I mean, I get the gist of what the article's saying.
Yeah. So thank you for explaining that all so well to us. And thank you for joining us, everyone that did. And God bless you. And there's a replay of the Elvis live stream that we did. That's actually replaying now. I started it at 11 o'clock. So it's 11:57. So it's anyway. It was fun rather than serious. Though it was a serious subject matter.
Started off.
And I think I left out a couple of illnesses that he had. There's something else that he suffered
Well,
from.
it got pretty hairy towards the end.
It just is unbelievable. I remember there's one thing that I left out. There's kidneys, liver, heart, lungs, migraines, glaucoma, arthritis, severe arthritis. I think I maybe left that one out. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable that he lived as long as he did. Anyway, that's replaying right now if you'd like to see it. Anyway, God bless all of you, and see you again next the paranormal news, and hopefully we'll have a paranormal show and about some paranormal subjects soon. Okay. Cool. Bye-bye, everyone, and God bless you. And stay strong. Stay strong, Ian Randall. You down there in Australia. I feel so sorry. I wish you could move out. I wish I could move somewhere myself. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.